Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today, and this is by request. And I was going through my messages earlier today, and I found one from a woman in Orlando, Florida, and to say it touched me, well, that would be an understatement, but she ended her message with just a request, I guess. And she mentioned that I have talked about King Tut's tomb and the only intact tomb of a pharaoh we have. And I've talked about the Anubis statue guarding it. And she just simply asked, what else is in that tomb? And have you ever made a video about that tomb? And I've kind of made a video, I think, about the discovery. I've made over, 1,300 videos. So my memory's getting a little hazy on what videos I have actually made and not made. But since you took that time to send that message, I'm going to do this request just for you and talk about King Tut's tomb. And this is a picture of Howard Carter. And about 95 years ago, he was really on his last legs as far as money and time to find a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And this is outside of present-day Luxor, ancient Thebes. And I guess one lucky probe down in the ground, he struck the stairway leading into King Tut's tomb. But I just thought I would talk a little bit about what's in that tomb and kind of what it represents, since you asked. Now here is some artwork from Tut's tomb, and I've talked many times about how they use the movement of the sun and how it arcs over the sky, and they use the movement of the sun and they equated it to stories, human stories on Earth, and really this is a great example of it. Now up in the top left here, I believe these two forms are both Osiris, just because of the symbol up here, and this is a scarab beetle, or a dung beetle, and what the Egyptians saw is they saw these rolling balls of dung across the sand in the desert, so they equated this guy with rolling the sun across the sky, and it's usually represented in a boat here. And here is Tut over here, and some other important gods, Horus and Mot and a few others. But these 12 baboons represent the 12 hours of the day. I believe this is what this represents. And excuse me, there is a little story, maybe a little lesson that needs to be learned on the route to the afterlife, or a remembrance of something that is learned. And each of these are specific stories. So really this is very well plotted out. In the baboon, they equate him, or he is a representation of the sun in a lot of stories, or equated with the sun, just because baboons howled at the sun at dawn. So the Egyptians thought baboons personified the sun, or the sun provoked their spirit in some way. So that's why the baboon worship. And I guess this doesn't say it any better. Here is baboons really on a boat with the giant sun god Ra in the middle. And this is usually a story of a journey over the sky, and it represented the story of the human on Earth, and it was told in allegorical terms with the sun over the sky in Egypt and the 12 hours of the day. Now here is another famous scene from Tut's tomb, and I am just giving you my interpretation of this, and I will maybe look at a website or two just to check on what I'm saying just to make sure I'm not totally crazy. But this is what it appears to me, and I've looked into this maybe about a year or two ago, so I kind of remember some of this stuff, but some of this stuff is pretty obvious here. This is, I would say this is a priest of Tut right here, and he has this leopard skin thing on, and that is also representative of what priests wore in other periods of history and how they're represented in tombs. So that's the only thing I can guess. And I think Tut's priest had a one name title, IA or AI or something like that. But this appears to be his priest, and this is Tut as Osiris, and I believe he has just gone through the weighing of the heart against the feather of truth, and he is represented as Osiris, deemed worthy of the afterlife, and that is his priest. I'm pretty positive of that. And this is kind of a story of a journey to the afterlife. And this is a representation of Tut as a boy or child. And this is the goddess Nut right here. And what is going on here is the goddess Nut is basically comforting the spirit of the child of Tut. And I think what she is holding in her hand here is, based on this up here, I think it's a representation of water, and that would make sense with the goddess Nut. And then this far left scene here, this is Tut embracing Osiris, and he is green here because he is reborn or regenerated as a soul in the afterlife. And this is like Osiris greeting Tut in the final stage of the afterlife, and he is being accepted as an eternal soul. And I think there is a representation of Sahu up here, and that is basically Orion / Osiris, eternal soul in the constellation of Orion. And behind him here, excuse me, this here is Tut, but I believe this is the soul of Tut. This is King Tut as the pharaoh, and this is his Ka, the soul of King Tut, and it's behind him here. I believe that is what that represents, based on the whole scene here and how you got to tie this all together. So I just wanted to show you that. Now here is one more scene, and this is Tut, and this is the goddess Isis, and she is holding up the Ankh, and this is a representation or his life or birth in the afterlife. This is a representation of Tut in the afterlife. And here is Anubis, of course, and he is holding an Ankh in his hand down here, but it's lowered, and he has his left hand on Tut. And this Ankh represents the personification of Tut's life on Earth, and that's why I believe, Anubis has it lowered, as in this is over, and he's kind of given Tut a nudge into the afterlife. And this is Isis. I believe this is Tut's cartouche here, but this is all about the afterlife. And here you see the Scarab pushing the sun here, king's life. And really, his whole story was equated to the movement of the stars and the sun, and he took his place in Orion in the afterlife. Now here's another scene from Tut's tomb, and I don't really think there's too much symbolism here, except maybe his head is to the west. But I believe this is really an actual depiction of Tut being led to his tomb, maybe, in the Valley of the Kings. It seems like they are carrying some sort of ceremonial thing here that Tut is laying upon. And that is just what that appears to me to be. And I think Tut died before he was 20. I think it was 17 or so, but I don't think they are really positive. And his father, of course, Akhenaten, grandfather, the really one of the most powerful pharaohs ever, Amenhotep III, and his great-grandfather, Tutmosis IV, I believe that is whose face is on the Sphinx, and I believe that is really why Tut built a little home, really right out in front of the Sphinx that he used, really kind of as a vacation home, kind of, is maybe what you would call it today. Now here is a scarab that was found in Tut's tomb, and I think part of this was made maybe with some, really what they call desert glass formed by high temperature impact of some sort. I think that's what some of this is made out of. But here is the scarab pushing the sun across the sky, the wings, the double eye symbolism, I believe, for Osiris in life and afterlife. And here's the two Ankh symbols. But one heck of a piece of jewelry right here. Now here is the Golden Mask of Tut. And really, this is pretty incredible, made out of gold. And really, you can almost tell his personality by looking at this. And on the side here, if there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if there's 12 of these golden stripes, does this represent the movement of the sun? Well, that's possible, and we have the snake symbolism at the very top of the crown here, and I'll leave that up to my subs to comment on those, see if you guys know exactly what that symbolizes up there. Now here is what they call, I think, the inner coffin of Tut, and here you see it's beautifully ornamented with wings here, and the wings really represented the bird, and birds represented the connection to the afterlife, as in soaring to the afterlife. I guess that's the easiest way it could be explained. And that's why Horus is represented as a falcon. But here you can see some pretty fine workmanship on the inner coffin of Tut. And here is a chair that was found in his tomb, made of gold. And here is, I believe these cats are lions. And this is how lions were represented. Now, I have talked about the ancient Anubis guarding the ancient necropolis, and the only reason I say that is because that's what the ancient evidence tells me. I'm not a member of the Royal Historical Dog Society or the Anti-Lion League of America, but I'm just telling you what research tells me. And lions did have their place. It symbolized royalty, and here you see the lions on Tutankhamen's chair. His name of birth, I think, was Tutankhaten. The last four words were Aten instead of Amun. And here you see the sun god Aten, that really his father Akhenaten brought into prominence. But that is a pretty cool looking chair, if you ask me. Now, here is an alabaster jar, and that is just incredible. That looks like some mad hookah device, actually. But that is made of alabaster. And here is an alabaster canopic jar. And the canopic jars held the organs of the pharaohs. I just wanted to show you that. And here is Tut as Orion in gold. Orion striding, back arm raised, front arm extended, just as every other pharaoh is depicted. Perfect posture is the constellation of Orion. And here is Anubis, and this is what greeted Howard Carter when he peered into the tomb. It was Anubis seated upon his ark, and all the research and text seems to say that there was a large Anubis shrine guarding the sacred necropolis of Giza. And of course, the most sacred, most important monument is going to be represented in tombs and artwork. And there is no lion with any sort of representation of guarding the ancient sacred necropolis of Rostau, which is Giza. But in tombs of pharaohs and all important people, Anubis and the posture of the Sphinx is represented. It is so clear that the ancient monument at Giza was Anubis. He is a preeminent god of resurrection. And in this video, it goes on to explain what Anubis is doing here. It says, he is guarding the gates of heaven on the box coffin of Orion. And that just fits everything with the ancient text and symbolism, and really the representation of what we see on the Giza Plateau. It's so clear the ancient shrine was Anubis, because in the ancient text it says the shrine is Anubis, and it gives the name Tep-2F for what we call the Sphinx Temple today. And Tep-2F is the temple of Anubis upon his hill. Proof that the ancient shrine was Anubis. I just want to make that perfectly clear. And I know I've done that a few times in the past. But that is King Tut's tomb. We have many fantastic things. He's represented in Orion in the text and artwork. And the ancient Anubis shrine connects that perfectly. And he comes from one of the most famous family trees. A lot of artwork, a lot of cool stuff. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very nice day. And for the person who sent me that message, well, it helped. Thank you very much.